Professor Sangeeta Bhatia, Principal, Professor Alok Sharma, Chairperson, Devanshi Aluwalia, President, Students' Council, dear friends. I'm really very pleased to be with all of you today when I see so many of you have spared their time and come. And I take your presence here as reflecting actually today your interest in knowing more about India, knowing more about the world, about the direction we are going, and I think that to me is something very, very encouraging. I also know this is almost exam time, or maybe it has started, and many of you are actually adjusting your commitments and schedules, and I'm very grateful to that. And that too I take really as reflecting your desire to be part of very much what is going on in the world. Now, other than your exam, there are some other big things happening in the country. And I'm sure you're aware of it. And, in different ways, we will be, as a society, as a country, we will be taking decisions in the coming weeks about our own future. But what I, as Foreign Minister and someone who spent all my life in the task of diplomacy for India, I thought, it would be best if I could actually share with you not just what is happening within the country or what is going to happen to the country, but how that is actually going to relate to the direction in which the world is going as well. Now, the topic for the day is Vishwa Bandhu Bharat, and you could actually ask yourself, what does that mean? Vishwa Bandhu, the word Bandhu itself is a very positive term. Clearly, when you say Vishwa Bandhu, it speaks of a certain relevance. It signifies, we are reliable, we are dependable somewhere, we are acceptable in some ways. You could say, Vishwa Bandhu is respected. But for me, what we seek and what I think we are trying to achieve, have achieved in some measure, is also we want not just to be respected, we want to be liked. And that is important because in the world of diplomacy, or in fact even in our own personal world, in society, all of us want to be respected and liked. All of us want to have as many friends and have as little problems. That's really what life is about. And what we want for ourselves as individuals, obviously we want for the nation as well. Now, like it happens with people, being respected and being liked doesn't happen by itself, because at the end of the day, the world is a competitive place, and everybody coexists with everybody, but everybody somewhere tries to gain some advantage, to do something a little bit better, to get ahead a little bit. So, to reach that place, it is important actually to work hard for it. To be respected, to be liked, to be a Vishwa Bandhu does not happen by itself. And that is really, in a way, what people like me do. That when we speak today about the country, we speak about the leadership, we speak about our efforts in the world, at the end of the day, it is really about the work that we put in, the relationships that we forge, the commitments that we make, the contributions we make, the responsibilities we take, all of which actually gives us a certain status in the world. Now, all this sounds like, it almost sounds like a moral science class, okay? How does it actually work in real life? And I want to explain to you today diplomacy. Vishwabandhu diplomacy with the help of some real life situations of the last few years, situations that I have dealt with as a minister of the Modi government. And let me start with one which I know there's a lot of interest, public interest even now, which is the situation we found ourselves about 2 years ago in Ukraine. All of you know that in February of 2022, there was conflict between Russia and Ukraine. We had a lot of students there, about little more than 20,000. And, even though we could see that there was a problem coming, we had urged the students to be, if possible, come home. But many of them, and you understand, you are also students, people are worried about their exams, they're worried about their practicals, what does a student do? They ask other students, so are you going to go home? And people say, no, I think maybe not, maybe I will stay. So the fact was, and when you are 20 plus minus, you actually, you know better than me, you feel I'll manage somehow, chala lenge kaam, not to worry. So the reality was, for all that we said and cautioned, vast majority of students actually stayed there and suddenly found themselves in the middle of a conflict zone. Now, they were in different clusters in different cities. So here is the challenge that we faced, which is how do you bring back students safely from a conflict zone? Actually, you can't, and the conflict was so sudden and suddenly the scale of it was so big. It was not even that you could land there was no access to the place. From wherever they were located, they had to travel the entire length of Ukraine, which was, 1,000 kilometers journey. And you had to get them out into a neighboring country where you had to go and pick them up and bring them home safely. So think about what it means in terms of how you achieve this. One, of course, what we had to do was to ensure initially that as many people could come out as quickly as possible. But in many cases, the fighting spread so fast that we had at least 2 or 3 major points where actually there was shooting, there was firing, there was bombardment which was going on. The second was that around Ukraine, we had to set up some facilities so that as soon as people came out, they were looked after, they were made to stay there for a day or two, flights went in, you had to find an airport, and it wasn't just us, other people were also trying to do the same thing. You had to get the governments of those countries to cooperate with you so that when people came out, their exit could be very smooth. So this is, in a way, how a Vishwabandhu foreign policy works in real life, which is we had to continuously actually keep talking to Russia, keep talking to Ukraine. We contacted the 5 countries which were neighboring there, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania and Moldova. To ensure that the facilities were set up, we actually sent in each of these cases a minister and said, you will stay there, you will, it's your responsibility till the last student comes home, that you will personally supervise the system works, because once they went there, there was a certain seriousness about it, and the country concerned also started taking it very seriously. And then we had to organize our air flights. We had to find ways by which they could go in smoothly, and we actually, during this period, to get those, there were by then little less than 20,000 students, we had to do 90 flights to these countries. Now in this, twice we had really, I would say honestly, very scary situations. One was where we had actually arranged for students to, this was a town which was being bombarded by shells. Unfortunately, one student who had gone out shopping was actually killed as a result. and the students were hiding in the hostels or living in the metro station. And we had arranged for a particular point for them to gather where the buses would go and pick them up. And to our, I would say shock, we found that as they were to move, that particular place and the way to that place the shells started falling near it. So when we speak about, how we get things done, Prime Minister Modi actually had to ring, he spoke to President Putin, had to tell him saying, look, this is a place where our students are gathering, and we had worked it out with the Russians that they would not fire, but yet at that time firing was going on. And this enabled actually those students to move there, and then they gathered, and then we were able to get them out. The second one, which happened a few days later, was actually even more difficult. Because this was another town, it was a town in the north, and the firing was more intense, it was less disciplined, you could say, in a way. It was also, the students had been, I mean just imagine staying in your hostel. Every day you are hearing the sound of firing, sometimes you are hearing some explosion close by, and we used to be talking to them continuously through this process because it was like keeping up their morale. And they were really at the end of their patience. I mean, on one hand, they desperately wanted to get out, but on the other hand, there was a concern that if they actually came out, something could happen. And on one particular day, we had arranged everything, we had even got the buses there. They had sat down, taken their seats in the bus when the firing started. And then they all had to run for their safety again. So they finally actually told us saying, look, we don't have faith, we just don't trust anybody that if we are to come out, how do we know, how can you guarantee that this would be safe? So again, what we had to do was, we had Mr. Modi speak to President Putin, speak to the Ukrainian President, Mr. Zelensky. Then we sat down and we had to work with them a particular route, saying this is the safe route, this will be guaranteed by everybody. But understandably, the students said, no, we are not, we are still not willing to trust people because their experience had been very bad. So finally, actually, we sent people from India, senior officers of the ministry who said, okay, if that's what it takes to get them out, we will go there and bring them out. So finally, the fact that Prime Minister spoke to the two presidents, we got a ceasefire for some time, we got a safe passage, and we were able to actually give the students the confidence that the buses which have come, the people who have come, is actually proof that you can now board the buses and we'll bring you back. And of course, in each case, once they came back, it was not the end of the problem because you then actually had to reach the border. It was very cold at that time. We are talking February, March. It was minus something at that time. Crossing the border was a nightmare. Then you had to make all the arrangements. So I'm describing this to you at some length because think about it for a moment. You have two countries who are actually fighting with each other, whose focus is against each other. To get them to agree to do something for a third country, to say, okay, I will stop this for one day or half a day or a few hours, I'll give you. It doesn't normally happen. It takes a particular effort. You have, as I said, you have to be respected. You have to have the relationships. The other leader or the other country feels, okay, this is a request, I can't really say no to this request. So this, and the fact we were able to get both of them, because sometimes in a conflict situation, you can get one party to do something. It's not always easy to get both of them to agree to do something. And for that, you need a kind, I would say, a sort of a quality of fairness, a reputation that look, you are not taking sides, you are good friends of both, you are well-wishers of both, but your students, they are stuck there, so please do me this favor, make that special gesture and let them out. So, in a way, I would say from this whole episode, if I were to give you, to me, the first quality of a Vishwabandhu, it is that ability to be fair, to be objective, to have friends. They may not be friends with each other, but you are friends with both of them. So that objectivity, that fairness is really, in a way, the quality from the example that I'm giving you. Let me move to a very different situation. Remember the COVID and what a horrible time it was? Not one of us will forget it, can forget it. So I want to share with you what happened on the foreign policy side of COVID. When COVID started, there was a big demand for medicines across the world. Natural, people were falling ill in massive numbers. Now, some of them may have been very complex medicine, but sometimes even basic things were in short supply. You will be surprised to know, in the world at that time, there was even an acute shortage of paracetamol. Can you imagine in the world there was almost like a black market for paracetamol. But not just paracetamol, there were a lot of other medicines as well. Later on, as vaccines came, then you all know there was a big demand for vaccines. There were a few countries that produced vaccines. The majority of the world relied on somebody else to give them those vaccines. Now, whether it was medicines in the early stages or vaccines at the later stages, India, and it was very interesting, when COVID first started, we are talking of January of 2020, the first big international meeting took place around our Republic Day period. I don't remember the exact date. It was by video conference. And the 20 top leaders of the world got together to say, okay, what are we going to do about the COVID? Now all 20 got a international briefing. How will COVID play out? And the general belief at that time, understandably, was that when you look around the world, if there was one country which will not be able to cope with the COVID, it is India. That was the general feeling. And we were sitting listening in. Prime Minister Modi was there. I was sitting behind him. Now, the reason why the world had such a feeling about us was, our health infrastructure was not so developed. We are not a rich country. People maybe felt we didn't have the resources. And at that time, if you remember, things which became common during COVID, masks, ventilators, PPEs, even gloves, whatever, hand sanitizers, they were actually produced, either not produced in India or produced in very, very small numbers. In fact, in the first few months, we had to go outside India to get it for our people. So the world actually began with a view that India is going to be the biggest, if you can say, if there is any student who's going to fail the exam, that is going to be India. This was their assumption. Actually, what happened? In those 2 years, 2.5 years, 20, 21, part of 22, we ended up making everything for ourselves, the masks, the ventilators, the PPEs. We ended up massively increasing our pharmaceutical industry, supplying the rest of the world. And we actually became one of the most efficient vaccine producers of the world. That we not only produced, vaccines under license for other countries or other companies, but we actually invented our own vaccine at that time. Now, we supplied vaccines to almost 100 countries. We gave medicines to about 150 countries, even a very large number of developed countries. I have been on phone calls where leaders of, from Europe, from North America, from other parts of the world, even the most developed countries used to ring up and either speak to Prime Minister Modi or to me, sometimes to our health minister saying, can you please do this, can you ship us this? Now, here is the other part of being Vishwabandhu. Because we gave vaccines to so many countries, today if you travel around the world, there are many, many countries where complete strangers will come up to you. I get reels forwarded. I know reels about me are forwarded, but sometimes others forward reels to me. Okay? Actually, people send me some short clip saying, I was in an airport in this place. I was in a hotel in that place. I was working with somebody in that country. And most often the messages would be, I got my vaccine from India. So that sense of goodwill today, that because remember, the rich countries, the developed countries, many of them took a view until we finish our vaccination, until we are all done, we will then think about the world. In fact, there were some countries, there was a country in North America where the report was that they had 8 times the vaccines of their population. And yet, here we are, a big country, the most populous country in the world, actually willing to share with 99 other countries at the same time as you and I were getting vaccinated. We actually went out. Now, as I said, I cannot tell you the goodwill even today. And I can tell you it will last one generation. Next time any of you have some time after your exams, just in the YouTube you will find one very interesting, like a short clip of the foreign minister of Jamaica. Look at it. It's a lady. And she actually says, with a gesture towards her arm, that I have India inside of me. And when you hear other people, look, all of us praise our country. It's natural. We feel good about it. But when you hear others say great things about India, based on their experience, when you actually see people getting emotional, saying at this very difficult time, see, this is what you did for me. I give you the second quality of a Vishwabandhu, which is generosity. That I tell people, yes, we run our foreign policy, but we run our foreign policy with a heart. That when in times of need, we are prepared to go the extra mile for others also in need. We are not one of those countries who only think about ourselves. And of course, we had the great advantage that our vaccines were actually good and actually worked. Now, while I say that we were generous and we helped others, and it wasn't, by the way, I spoke about vaccines and medicines. Interestingly enough, it happened even in food. I went during the COVID period. I was one of the few people who could travel, mostly because there was something urgent, something pressing, which made me go out. It was a very strange feeling. Sometimes I would be the only person at an airport going out. And I remember at that time, actually, I went to Kuwait. And I saw in the room of the Kuwaiti minister a photograph, okay? And I was struck, it looked like India to me. I mean, we recognize any part of India as soon as we see it. So I actually asked him, I said, why is that? It was an airport, So he said, this is Mumbai airport. It was empty. There were very, very few planes there. But one of them was an Air India aircraft. He said, I kept it here to show you, because even though you locked down the country, even though you went through all of this, there was one thing you people did for us. The Gulf imports food every day from India. And through the lockdown, we made sure that, during the lockdown, we supported our own people. We made very special arrangements to make sure people got their rations. But we also made sure people abroad got their rations. And when the result was actually in the Gulf, a lot of the Gulf countries asked people to leave. They asked foreigners to leave. They asked people, because they were shutting down their economy as well. They were very, very nice to Indians. They actually made sure in many cases that our people were kept in their jobs, they were paid, they were vaccinated. So we actually got a degree of treatment from them. Now, I come back to my vaccination story. Do you remember the Delta variant? And you remember the oxygen problem? Now, you know how much we were helped by other. One, of course, we ramped up our oxygen. We made sure oxygen which was produced anywhere was brought to the centers of population. Because usually oxygens are made in factories, and usually factories are not near the big cities where people live. But other than that, what happened was all the countries who we helped with medicines, all the countries for whom we did something special, they actually, during Delta variant, if you see, they actually came forward. Many of them gave us oxygen producing equipment. Many of them actually shipped us liquid oxygen. They came by ships, they came by planes. So I put the second set of qualities of Vishwabandhu from this episode, which is be generous, because if you are generous, if you have that reputation, if you have helped enough countries, some of them at least will help you in your hour of need. And that is actually what happened in this case. Now, it's one thing to help each other. Sometimes, actually, it's important to go the extra mile, to do something special. And I again come back to something like Ukraine, but not just Ukraine. In the last 10 years, we've had a number of occasions where we've had to do some kind of rescue operation. Some of you would remember there was a big earthquake in Nepal. There was a civil war in Yemen. Last year there was a civil war in Sudan. Even during COVID, the initial, when COVID first started in China, people, many students, many of our citizens, not only students, came back on flights. Now, we did one thing which not many other countries do. Wherever there was space in the plane, wherever we were moving somewhere, we were walking, we had a truck, we had a bus, we had a camp. If there was somebody from some other country, we always took them with us. Now, you would have heard during Ukraine that one of our neighbors actually walked alongside an Indian flag. Okay, you know which neighbor I'm talking about. Right. Now, why I say that to you? Again, as part of the generosity, if we are doing something for ourselves, when you extend it to others, I still remember at that time in Nepal, there were a lot of Spanish tourists who were stuck at that time. And the Spanish foreign minister at that time, the minister spoke to my predecessor, Sushma Swaraj. And they asked, saying, can you also rescue them and bring them out? We did it. But to be honest, and they told me this later, they said, look, we made the request, but we really thought you would be busy with your own thing, so we never actually thought you would do it. So what I want to tell you is every one of our rescue operations, if you see, you will always find, some Sri Lankan, Maldivian, Nepali, as I said, even the odd Pakistani. There would be sometimes Europe. In Yemen, we brought out some Europeans, Americans. So when you go that extra mile, when you do something for them, that is something which the world doesn't forget. So a Vishwa Bandhu is definitely fair, they are balanced, they are objective, they are friends with everybody, they are generous, they go the extra mile. Now, let me come to something much more recent. You all know that there's right now a very difficult situation going on in the Middle East, in West Asia. That after the terrorist attack on Israel in October, after that the Israelis went into Gaza, a lot of people have got killed. Even now that fighting is going on. And in many ways the problem has escalated. So you have a very tense, very complicated situation involving Israel, involving the Palestinians, involving many of the Arab countries, the Gulf monarchies, involving Iran. There was an exchange of, the Iranians and the Israelis a few days ago fired on each other. Now, look at how a Vishwa Bandhu would approach this situation. We were very clear when Israel was, on October 7th, when the terrorists attacked Israel, that this was terrorism. We took a clear stance on it. When Israel responded, we also took a position that, look, whenever any military response takes place, it is very important that civilian lives are protected. And if you are displacing civilians, so they are no longer in the homes, you have to give some kind of humanitarian corridor out there. We also have when Israel and Iran started firing at each other, I personally called up the two foreign ministers there on the Prime Minister's instructions and basically told them, saying, look, the whole region is worried. We urge you, don't go forward on this. And today, actually, while we are doing all of this, and by the way, in terms of the Middle East, we support eventually a homeland for the Palestinians, and we are very public about that as well. We also today make a practical contribution. About 20 of our ships are actually in the Red Sea, making sure that these attacks on shipping which increases the cost of trade, that those attacks are limited. So I give you again, just think how many parties, Israelis, Palestinians, the Arab countries out there, the Iranians, and yet we are able to actually engage all of them, talk to all of them, get them to, in many cases, understand our positions, get them sometimes carry messages from one to the other, which we often do, by the way, in this very conflict type of situations. So here again you see that ability to talk and engage multiple people, to do it in a way, I tell people, if I were to give to a common person on the street, saying, give me Indian diplomacy in 4 words, I would say actually it is sabka saath, sabka vikas. That ability to carry everybody with you. And for this, you have to build a track record. They have to trust you. Now, I've spoken about the Middle East, but let us look, at what is happening much closer to our own homes. You know, last year, Sri Lanka went through a very, very difficult situation. And I don't know any of you have ever had the occasion to go there. You know, it's a country in many ways. Their income levels are higher than us. Their development levels are, quality of life is quite good there. And yet this country actually reached a stage where there was no food, there was no petrol, there was no power, because the petrol, they used to produce their power, electricity from oil. They ran out of medicines. I was actually on a visit, and I saw, well, I was there for some other conference. Like all of us do, you keep looking at social media when you're sitting out there. And I saw out there a hospital said, I have run out of life-saving medicines. Can someone help us? Now, it was really a country on the ropes. Now, the rest of the world kept debating, ye karna chahiye, wo karna chahiye, figures are not okay, let us get a full picture. We took the decision, saying, okay, if as an immediate neighbor, if we don't help, who will help? And we made a very big call. We actually gave them a very big package, which was 1.5 times the package of what they eventually got from the IMF. So today, in terms of India's image in the neighborhood, if you go to most of our neighbors, for them, what we did for Sri Lanka shows what a reliable neighbor India is. And it wasn't a single action. Our neighbors during COVID got their vaccines from us. When Ukraine fighting started and the world's petrol and diesel got disrupted, they got their fuel from us. When fertilizers supply got disrupted, they got their fertilizers from us. When their people, get stranded somewhere, any of these operations that I go, they know, a Maldivian, a Sri Lankan, a Nepali, a Bangladeshi, they will know today that if there is an Indian aircraft out there, there is also a seat for them out there. So this image today of what is a Vishwa Bandhu, it is actually, I'm using all these illustrations to tell you that when a country actually gets its own act together, develops its capacities, interacts with the world, manages different relationships, is seen as fair, is seen, if you, in the world today, there is a big, even in the field of economics, there's a big debate going on. Which country should we invest in? There is a lot of what are called emerging tech, like say making chips, semiconductors. It's a very tightly held technology. People don't want to take it everywhere because they're afraid, koi chori kar lega, you don't know where it will go. So once you get the reputation that you are trusted, you are fair, you will honor your contract, you will honor your word, you are reliable, you are a good friend, you are a fair friend. And you sometimes will never do something which would unnecessarily hurt other people's interests. I think these are really, I would say, qualities which mark a Vishwa Bandhu. I believe that in the last 10 years, we have very steadily today built up that image. It is, of course, the variety of other factors as well. Our economic performance has been a big factor. The skill and talent of our people has been a big factor. But today, if India's prestige in the world is high, if people in many ways listen to us, if they defer to us in difficult situations, if they respond to us, these are developments which don't happen by themselves. They are the result actually of accumulated initiatives and actions and efforts on our part. So for all of you, because today we speak about an Amrit Kal, we talk about a Viksit Bharat, we are confident that the next 25 years, this country is going to progress and change beyond recognition. That what you people will do. You know, our generation has created a launching pad. You are the people who are going to be launched from that launching pad. And it's your, your confidence, your ambition, your capability, which will actually define this country in the coming 25 years. But what I do want to tell you today, as Foreign Minister, we believe today that the world is very well disposed towards India. It regards us with a lot of respect. That there is a great desire on the part of much of the world that we also succeed. And I think that is something which we, in a way, a legacy or an achievement which we would like to pass on to the youthful generation as they do the journey in the Amrit Kal. Once again, I thank you. In the midst of all of this, you have come, and I look forward to our Q&A.
Thank you so much, sir. Your eloquent words not only captivated the audience, but also shed lights on crucial aspects that demand our attention.
Sir, you rightly said, Vishwa Bandhu Bharat has the ability to be fair, generous and objective.
सर आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपने हमारे लिए अपना कीमती समय निकाला. We are indeed grateful to you and we thank you for sharing your words of wisdom.
Now, the house is open for questions. We would request you all to keep your questions short and crisp. We will take a few questions first.
Okay.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Well, is there a mic? Yeah, please, go ahead.
So, a very good afternoon, sir. My name is Mili Balyan, and my question is that...
Can you just move the mic up closer?
Yeah,
thanks.
sure. So, India's performance, like in various fields, be it economy or global front, has been quite impressive. So, if elected, what is the vision or the plan in terms of foreign policy for the upcoming tenure? Thank you.
Okay. Can I make one request? Maybe I can get about 2-3 questions at a time. That will allow me to cover more people. So if I can maybe take, yeah.
Namaste, sir, from Gargi College. Myself, Shreya. First of all, it's an honor for me to stand here in front of you, and I'm grateful that I got this opportunity. So my question is that what are the strategies that our country employs to promote stability and peace in the conflict-affected regions? Thank you.
Namaste, sir, from Gargi College. I'm a first-year student, Sophia Ronak. And my question is, what specific steps is India taking to enhance its influence and presence in international organizations? Thank you.
One more question, please.
Namaste, sir, from Gargi. My name is Priyansha Bhatt. I am from BA program English plus History. I'm a first-year student. My question for you, sir, is, how do you put forward your opinions and consolidate them in front of countries who try to criticize every move of ours while making sure that our relationships with the same don't weaken over time? Thank you.
What I'll do, I'll answer this. I hope the mic will then move to some other part in fairness. So what would be the foreign policy for the next term? I think in many ways we would build upon what has been achieved, some of which I have described. But definitely there are a few issues which are very crucial, which we'll have to address in the next term. You can call it a challenge, but I think within that challenge there are big opportunities for India. One of them is that the world after COVID does not want to be dependent on a single country for everything. So there is a big effort today to make sure that goods are produced, especially sensitive goods are produced in many other locations. which means that if India plays its hands well, which is where diplomacy comes in, we can actually, in areas like semiconductors, chips, drones, electric vehicles, battery storage, green technologies, lot of these cutting edge areas where till now we have not been plugged into the global supply chain, a lot of those can actually come to us. So I see a big, you can say, global international economic agenda. A second, I would say, we can see a global workplace happening. There is, in many parts of the world, the number of people, the talent available is shrinking very, very quickly. So we are actually already approached by a lot of European countries, Australia, Japan, even some Asian countries, very keen that actually we have a system for people to move for work. Now, our effort is anybody who goes out to work, they should be secure, they should be well treated, their rights and entitlements should be respected. So how do we create actually a global workplace? Some basic work has already started here, and we need to see how we take that forward. The third is something which we have been trying for some time, which is how do we make the world more aware and more resolute in countering terrorism. We are the biggest victim of terrorism, and if we do not take the initiative, the world will not act. So I think we have a very special responsibility. And the fourth one, which comes to a question which somebody further down asked, which is in international organizations, because international organizations are 80 years old, how do we bring about change? The UN is particularly important here. We believe today there is a momentum for change, that the majority of the countries in the world actually want change. But there are a few who are resisting it, so how do we get? So I would say international economy, global workplace, how do we make the country more secure? And finally, how do we reform the UN? I think these would be some of the elements. But I will say one last thing. Eventually, any country is judged in the world by what it does, how successful they are at home. So it is actually our development and progress at home that is today getting us the greatest respect in the world. That we are today the fastest growing large economy. We are growing at 7%. There is no other large economy which is anywhere near us. But we have to make sure that this continues for the next 30, 40 years. So how do we keep growing? And in that also there is a role, because when technologies come, when investment comes, when best practices comes, all of this really makes a difference. The second question on conflict strategy. It would depend on the conflict. I'll give you two examples. In the case of the fighting which is going on in Ukraine, we have actually at different points of time helped on specific issues. There was at one point of time a concern that one of the nuclear stations there would come under attack. So actually the Ukrainian Prime Minister asked us to speak to the Russians. There was a time when grain exports from Ukraine had stopped. So at that time, the Turkish were working on it. They asked us to help out a little bit. So part of it is to work with other countries in this kind of situation. The second is the kind of example I gave you, which is help out by committing your resources. I mean, as I said, we are today one of the largest commitments in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden and Arabian Sea is from India. The Americans have larger numbers, but there were very few others who have 20 ships in that region. They're working every day, searching ships, countering piracy, ensuring that any ship which is attacked is immediately, we provide them. So there's a practical side, there's a diplomatic side, and unfortunately, the world will have conflicts. Right now, the outlook doesn't look great. So I think it's one area where we need to work on. The fourth question is a tricky question. Thank you for asking, which is really how do you counter somebody or some country in a way effectively without antagonizing them further? I mean, that's my understanding of your question. It's a skill. Okay, it's a skill because at the end of it all, look, you have to explain to people. You have to be reasonable with people. Sometimes, yes, you have to be a little sharp, you have to push back. But even after you do that, you need to then sort of manage them. Because at the end of the day, it's not about winning arguments. It's about winning friends. But but there are people who need to know the truth. You know, that's also a reality. I mean, not everybody readily understands our position. So when they are, you know, when they pressurize you or they put something across which is very insensitive or oblivious to our interests, I think it's important that they understand where we are coming from, how that is put. But as I said, finally that ability to get along and say, look, I am actually your friend, I am trying to make you understand how it is going. And that's what we do in our business. Thank you.
Namaste, sir. I'm Dr. Jasvinder Kaur. Sir, first and foremost, a big thank you for being a foreign minister. You have made India proud. And once again, thank you for coming to Gargi. We'll all remember this moment for our lifetime. Sir, I don't want to make this controversial, so more than a question, this would be a wish, and I would be speaking for many of us when I say this. We wish to see you fighting the Lok Sabha polls in 2029. Of course, you are re-elected for Rajya Sabha. So I'll just say this is a wish, and is there any possibility? Jai Shri Ram.
Is it open? Good afternoon, Dr. Jaishankar. My name is Manisha Roy. My question to you is, you've spoken about growth and the India story and how wonderful we are doing. But, if we look at the flip side, there is this huge contradiction that India faces today, which is rising income and wealth inequality. Unless we reconcile this with our growth story, unless, we have this demographic dividend that we talk about, we have a young population, unless we find jobs for all the young people that we have, how do we make this India story sustain? How do we make it go forward? And today's theme is Vishwa Bandhu. In our own neighborhood, we have this neighborhood first policy. But in recent times, we've seen our relationships with our own neighbors have nosedive. You look at Nepal, where even the question of Agniveer, Nepal, the Gorkhas, they have a problem with that. You look at Maldives. So how do we, with this broader theme of Vishwa Bandhu, how do we reconcile and make our relationships better with our own neighbors? Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, my question to you is, sir, you are an achiever and truly inspirational for all of us. And sir, my question is to you is, what is your bucket list wish? Maybe politically or personally, but what you wish, and if you get a chance and do it. Thank you.
I'll take one more question.
Good afternoon, sir. First of all, I'm deeply honored for your presence here. And so my question is, how important it is for India to be equally resolving the issues which is existing inside the country and on the international level. So what's your view and what's your take upon this?
Okay. The first question, the Lok Sabha question. My Rajya Sabha tenure runs out in 2029. So I will leave it at that. I think this time around, the sense was that someone like me would be more useful, more effective for my party, being in different places rather than being in a constituency, and that's the call, because at the end of the day we are part of an organization, and the organization takes that call based on everybody evaluating different people. On the set of issues that you raised, look, it was not my intention to say everything at home is going splendidly and everything is fantastic. That was not at all what I was projecting. I was actually saying we have to work hard at home, because it's our achievements at home which will win us respect abroad. Now, we are today roughly below $3,000 per capita income society. We are cumulatively, as a country, our GDP is less than $4 trillion. We have a long way to go. We hope our first target is to cross the 5 trillion mark in the coming years. In the Amrit Kal, our target is that we will cross the $30 trillion economy. And Goldman Sachs actually predicts that by 2070 something, we will actually be the second biggest economy in the world. We have to know, these do not happen automatically. I mean, people have to work hard, there have to be right policies, it's something which will be an aggregate or cumulative of everything that we do. Now, I completely agree with you that any growth of any country has to be inclusive, that you have to carry, no country will be well served as one segment is growing and a large part of it is kind of left behind. So if there is I would say a working principle that we have in the government today, certainly for the last 10 years, and by the way, I'm the foreign minister, but I'm very deeply involved in everything else that the government does as well. I can tell you that we actually in the government are looking at exactly the issues that you're talking about. That, there are certain districts in India where the development level is way behind the rest of the country. So how do you give them special attention? There are categories of people. There are, I would say, in a total population we are about 1.4 billion today, okay? 800 million people, which is about 55%, 60% of the population of our country. They do not have the income levels to actually ensure that they get enough food and they are healthy and nutritious, which is why actually we provide them 5 kilograms of food as their entitlement every month. There are people who struggle for health access. This whole Ayushman Bharat is about health. We know in this country, and I'm saying this in this institution, that one of the biggest problems in this country is the gender gap. Today, I would just look at it this way. I'm connecting to you 3 dots. The whole toilet scheme, because actually the lack of toilets was such a big disadvantage, particularly for girl children in other environments. The whole Beti Padhao, Beti Bachao. And then something like, the Mudra scheme, where you give loans and you particularly give loans to women. So how do we actually narrow gender gaps? How do we narrow income gaps? How do we ensure, after 70 years of independence, a large part of our country didn't have piped water, didn't have electricity at home. Many villages did not have a pakka road leading to them. There was no doctor within 3 kilometers of where they lived. These are actually today, when people ask us, because I'm here to talk today about foreign policy, but if I were to give, actually, if you ask me what has changed in the last 10 years, these are actually the socio-economic realities, are actually what has changed in the last 10 years. If there is a sense of optimism, which doesn't mean, I come back to your point, it doesn't mean that, oh yes, we have done our job and everything is great. It means that if we could actually fix so many things in the last 10 years, why can't we think bigger? Why can't we do more? Why can't we be more ambitious? Why can't we set higher targets for ourselves? And this country has it, think back on that COVID story I told you. The world actually said, these guys are the one people who are going to fail the test. And we were the people who finally passed the test. So when we put our minds to it, we have that ability to do it. That is really the kind of fire that we want, and we believe today we have ignited. And one area where again there's been a big change in the last 10 years. We reformed beginning in 1992. Okay, the initial years of our economic policy created a big crisis. So in 1992, in the Narasimha Rao government, there were big reforms which were done. But what has happened in the last 20 years after that, we did not build the kind of manufacturing which China, for example, did. So eventually what creates jobs? Because you referred to employment. Services only creates limited jobs. Manufacturing creates jobs. But we actually made manufacturing very hard in this country, because you won't get good manufacturing if you don't have good infrastructure. You won't get good manufacturing if you don't have good skills and education institutions. So they come as a sort of package. And it's that package actually that we have tried to move. We believe we've got a lot of success in it in the last 10 years. But I'm fully share your viewpoint that there is very much more. And that is actually when we say Viksit Bharat. It's all those things that we want to see going ahead. The bit about the neighbor. Look, I'll tell you the truth. What happens in our neighborhood is, if 100 things go right, nobody writes about it. If 3 things go wrong, they complain, and we immediately pick up that complaint. That same, you spoke about saying Agniveer in Nepal. Agniveer, why did we do Agniveer? We did it for ourselves. We will reform our armed forces, obviously with Indian interests in mind. I mean, any reform, I'm not talking now of Agniveer, an Indian decision cannot be made because somebody else's interest is at stake. India will decide on what is India's interest. Similarly, you spoke about Maldives. I mean, yes, they have their politics. Sometimes you have a government which may have a viewpoint about India, but at the end of the day, we tell them, saying, look, we are all neighbors. We can't move away from each other. We have shown, I mean, for every example that somebody can give you, I can give you a reverse example. Say in Nepal, for years, Nepal has a tremendous power ability to generate electricity. We are logical customers, but for political reasons, they never did it. Now they are willing to do it. In Sri Lanka, as I said, Sri Lankans know actually who really helped them out. If you go to Bangladesh today, the thinking about India has changed fundamentally. So I don't really accept that, I'm not saying we don't have problems in the neighborhood. Of course we do. Every country has problems in their neighborhood. But on the whole, I would say, with some exceptions, by and large today, our neighbors believe that working with India is actually good for them. They get benefits. I tell you my biggest problem. How do I give as many visas as our neighbors need to come to India? If they didn't like us, why would they be coming in that kind of numbers? And the last two, that in a way I've answered the last question about resolving things inside. That I do believe that today inclusive development, carrying everybody, looking at the last mile, last person, If the last person moves ahead, believe me, everybody else will move ahead. But if the first person moves ahead, the last person may get left behind. So we need a kind of a reaching out. And the best thing about us is, you'd be surprised in the world today. We have a great reputation as the most digital-friendly governance in the world. That if you look today at how much of your services, how much of your transactions are done digitally. Digitally means efficiency. Digitally means less corruption. When payments are made into people's account, that means people don't steal your money on the way, which used to happen in the past. Digital means that actually, I can give you in my own department, say getting a passport, how much easier it has become. And you can actually go and say, okay, where is my passport application? What is the status of it? So I think today we have done well. We should take pride, but we should be realistic that there are still many other things we need to sort out. And the penultimate question, your bucket list, what do you wish to do? Look, I was a student, like some of you are, of political science and international relations. When you study something, if you can get an opportunity to practice it, nothing can be a bigger wish than that. And then when you practice it in that line of work, if you do well, if somebody asked me 20 years ago, what do you want to be? I'd say, I'd want to be an ambassador. After I became ambassador, they say, okay, what do you want to be? I'd have said, okay, maybe I want to be foreign secretary or ambassador to US. The one wish I got, which wasn't really my wish, was my present job. That is the only thing which kind of came to me by accident. It wasn't my wish, but it's an honor that I'm proudly accepted.
Thank you so much, sir. We won't take any more questions. As we conclude this special and insightful session, we need to express our gratitude to all those who made it possible.
I now invite Lovely Pandey, President, Student Council.
Okay.
I think principal said take one more round.
Okay.
Sir, if you permit, then can we take the last round from the upper audience?
In fact, that was also in my mind. I was looking up there. So if you can get a mic up there.
Yeah, it's there.
Okay.
Good afternoon, sir. Myself, Mosmi from Gargi College. And my question to you is, sir, how can the youth of India actively participate in promoting the ideals of Vishwa Bandhu Bharat? Thank you, sir.
Namaste, sir. Sir, first of all, I would like to mention that I am blessed to have my inspiration right here in front of me to interact directly. And sir, I would really admit that I have seen most calm, generous and intellect foreign minister or I have heard ever. So sir, thank you for being you. And my question to you is that, sir, despite having all those apprehensions that we have talked about from our own very close neighbors and anything else, your personal aspirations, where do you see India as, Vishwa Mitra or Vishwa Bandhu till 2047? Thank you, sir.
Namaste, sir. My name is Anushka. I just want to ask you a simple question. When we talk about India as an emerging power, will we be seeing India becoming the member of UNSC in future? And do you, as the External Affairs Minister, feel the need of India becoming the member of the Security Council?
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Kesar. And my question to you is, are we going to see our Vishwa Bandhu Bharat become an Akhand Bharat in the next 5 years? Basically, will we acquire the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir?
Namaste, sir. As we are undergraduate students, my question is, what are opportunities that foreign ministry offers right now to undergraduate?
Thanks. Okay, let me stop here. Look, what are the Vishwabandhu ideals? How do we promote them? See, I kind of shared how diplomacy works, but I also want to tell you all something. When we go out, any of us go out in the world, we meet people, we talk to people in different walks of life, they have an impression of India. I have seen in the last 40 odd years what used to be the impression of India in the 1980s, 70s, 80s, and what it is today. And that impression has changed enormously. So I would say, in a way, all of you have some role, because what we do, what we do at home, how we project ourselves outside. You may go as a tourist somewhere, you may go to work somewhere, you may have a foreign friend, I don't know. But at the end of the day, the world has a sense of India from a series of human interactions with Indians, and every one of us in the pursuit of our normal life and activities actually somewhere makes a difference. So if today India is looking better, and I agree, we can keep growing out here, I actually say the real credit, fine, Indian diplomacy may be at the front of it, and we may have because we have a great Prime Minister who projects it so strongly, but finally it is the cumulative effort of everything that we do, how we behave as a people, how we respond, that is what makes a difference. So when I come to the next question, which was 2047 aspirations, what would be an aspiration? Look, in all honesty, I cannot even imagine today what the world will be like in 2047. Because just ask yourself, we have entered maybe the first or second year of artificial intelligence. In the next 10 years, our AI will change the way we work, the way we behave, the way we process and deploy information beyond recognition. That if you look at the kind of technologies today around us, everything, our generation, let us say right now, we are still, we would say, maybe the biggest change in our lifetime was the smartphone, okay, in our personal lives. But your generation, for you, this is a given. This is your starting point. You are going to see very, very big things happen in your, the way we travel, the way we live, the way we interact with each other. Everything is actually going to change. It's something which you need to prepare for. What I would like to see, I would like to see India at the front of that change. I would like India to lead that change, not be, a recipient of something, others did it, theek hai, humko bhi diya, we are also happy we got it. And I'm convinced we can do it. I give the example to people that 2G, 3G, 4G were all made outside India, and we all used it in our phones. Today, for the first time, you are all using 5G, which is made in India. It's an India stack. So, if we can actually, do things, it's not, one we have to make in India, but we have to then innovate in India, we have to design in India, we have to engineer in India, we have to in some way lead in India. This is really a kind of a 2047 vision that we have. As we become emerging power, the third question, should we be in the UNSC? Absolutely, I think no question. After all, how can we not look at the logic of it? We are the largest country in the world. We are the 5th largest economy, will be the 3rd largest economy. By what logic can people keep us out beyond the point? So I think history is with us. Things are moving in our favor. So where it goes, I don't know. But definitely I know it will go in the right direction. That other question about Viksit Bharat, where would Viksit Bharat, how would it develop? It's again very hard to predict the consequences of all that is going to happen in the next 20, 30 years. Because somewhere we have unleashed energies in this country. And I feel that many of the historical situations, things which people took for granted, and because you asked me about POK, I'll answer that very directly. Look, forget I will come to POK for a moment. Take even 370. People just assume 370 cannot be changed, and that, this is something we just have to accept, because the politics of the day had driven it very deeply into public consciousness. Now we see, once we change it, then the entire ground situation changes. So all I can say with respect to POK, that there is a parliament resolution. Every political party of this country is committed to ensure POK, which is a part of India, returns to India. This actually is our national commitment. But I do want to say one thing. I didn't used to get people ask us about this 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. It is when we have done, when we have put 370 to rest. Now people understand, yes, the POK is also important. So what has happened today is, because we have, finally taken the right decision on 370, I think in the minds of our own people today, the POK issue has come to the front of their thinking. And as they say, before the first prerequisite for something happening is first it must be in your thoughts. Once it is in your thoughts, the rest will certainly happen at some point. And last question, what can MEA do? What we do is we have programs of internships. We try also in different ways to interact much more with campuses, to work with students, faculties, ensure that people have some understanding of the world from people who actually do that business. And I would be, I'll leave the thought with you, Principal, that if you feel, down the road that it would be helpful for us to make this something more systemic, I would be very, very happy to see that happen.
Thank you so much, sir, for being so patient with us.
I now invite Lovely Pandey, President, Student Council 2024-25, to deliver the vote of thanks.
As this enlightening session comes to a close, it is my privileged honor to extend a heartfelt vote of thanks to each and every one of you for gracing us with your presence today. I, Lovely Pandey, President of Student Council 2024-25, on behalf of the entire team, would like to express our deepest gratitude to Dr. S. Jaishankar, Honorable Minister of External Affairs, for taking the time out of his busy schedule to join us and share the invaluable insights. Sir, your profound wisdom, diplomatic acumen, and visionary leadership have enriched our discussion and inspired us all. Now, I would like to extend a sincere appreciation to Professor Alok Sharma, Chairperson of Gargi College Governing Body, and our esteemed Principal, Professor Sangeeta Bhatia, for always motivating us to push our boundaries and to be our best selves. I would also like to thank our union advisors, Dr. Manju Sahai, Dr. Joya Bhattacharya, Dr. Poonam Fogart, Dr. Renu Soni, and our proctor teachers Professor Aprajita Mohanty and Dr. Anita Bhatt for always standing by us. I would also like to take an opportunity for expressing my heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Sunil Kohli, Mr. Deepak Chandra, Vikas sir, Gopal sir, Gardening Committee and all the volunteers who have worked tirelessly behind the scene to make this event a resounding success. Your dedication and commitment have ensured that today's session was both informative and engaging. I would also like to extend my sincere thanks to the diligent personnel of Hauskhas Police Station and the dedicated security team of the Ministry of External Affairs for their invaluable contribution in ensuring the seamless execution of the event. Last but not the least, a special word of thanks to our audience for your attention, curiosity and eagerness to learn. Your unwavering support is what drives us to continue organizing events of such significance and impact. As we depart from this session, let's carry with us the knowledge, insights and inspiration gained today and let us continue to work together towards